Okay. Okay, so we I have two main things that I want to go through today, and we'll see how we do with time. And I think we are figuring out that we can do these ongoing and continue to meet, as often as we need. So I don't want to feel too stressed if we don't get through everything. I want to spend like quality time, and we can continue to make our way through as much as possible. So there's the two things that I was thinking about for today. We're going to continue that sort of next step with the assessment and remediation guide. So we're going to talk a little bit further. I think the last time we met, I tried to give you just a big picture overview as you're starting to like get into some materials and understand it. Today, we're actually going to take a look at some student scenarios, and I'm going to explain how we can use the table of contents as a starting point. I know I briefly mentioned it last time, so I have some links for you. I have some scenarios of kindergarten, first and second grade students that we're going to work through together today, talk through those a little bit, and then wrap up about halfway through with some of the assessment remediation guide conversations. In the second half, I wanted to talk about summer school. So we have some summer school recommendations for utilizing CKLA during summer school programs. So I figured I would share that with all of you, and then obviously you'll have the recording, and then I'll follow up with I have a summer school presentation deck that I can share with you that then you can have all of the resources too.
Perfect.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Is it cold in Manchester?
It's snowing in Manchester.
It's snowing here too. I looked outside because I heard something and I'm like, what's happening? I'm like, it's snowing here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But
it's April,
it's
right?
Short-lived, right? Yeah.
No. So what my husband was saying about, like getting stuff situated outside and opening the pool and like putting patio furniture out. And I was like, it's April in Pittsburgh, which means it's like every day is different. So I think we're all ready for nicer weather. Okay, so we're gonna kick off with some information a little bit deeper into the assessment and remediation guide. We call it the ARG. There's lots of ways that you can, it doesn't matter what you call, as long as you know what it is and what's in it. And then moving into summer school. I wanted just to make sure, I think this image always helps me. So when we're talking about just high level, and we're talking about the assessment and remediation guide, there's obviously a process when we're talking about how to figure out how to use data to guide instruction. How to help teachers use data to guide instruction. And then in a program like CKLA, where you have additional assessment and remediation lessons and activities that are included, how do you use those in sort of this big picture process? So I think this is a good image that, for me anyways, helps me think about, so if I have needs in my classroom, and maybe it's whole class needs, maybe it's groups of students needs, and maybe it's down, to the very individual needs, I've got to figure out what those needs are first. So I'm using my core instruction, my formative assessments, my quick checks for understanding. That's one way that I'm determining student need. I'm also likely having other data sources, whether it be from like a universal screener or another type of assessment measure where I'm identifying groups that have specific needs and I'm looking at individual specific needs. So nonetheless, we have to know what the needs are before we've got to have the what the need is before we can just determine exactly what we're doing with those specific groups or students. The assessment and remediation guide comes into play is because you've got things that are happening. So you got two parts to where CKLA fits in here. You've got the in-lesson supports. So we talked through last week just those sidebar supports. That would be scaffolded supports, right? That's not as intense, but they're quick in the moment interventions and scaffolds and supports. So those are meant just to be able to provide that next step to help students stay within core, stay within grade level. The other side of that is that within CKLA, you've got your assessment remediation guide and the decoding and encoding guide. So you've got the ARG and the DERG. That's if we're talking about, we know we've got to keep them, the goal is we got to keep them as close to the core, but we also know that we've got it, there's gaps that we have to fill. And so the ARG and the decoding guide is meant for that. It's meant for those gaps. It's meant for those, how can we quick remediate and stay close to the core, help our students understand what they're doing every day within grade level instruction, and keep them a little bit closer. So we're talking about like looking at tiers. This might be for like some additional tier 2 support, so that outside of grade level time, because we don't want to replace grade level instruction, we want to support it. And so we're supporting it in grade level with the sidebar supports, and then we're also supporting core with some of these assessment remediation guide lessons, but that typically is happening outside of that core instruction time. The assessment remediation guide lessons that we're going to focus on today, there's 3 different sort of, I guess, overviews, or 3 different approaches to them. So we've got a template that is used to provide guided reinforcement. We've got another template or outline that's used for explicit reteaching, and then we've got comprehensive reteaching. And so all of those things have different levels of support, but it's all within the assessment remediation guide, and it's laid out in a way that it's pretty simple in terms of flow and process of planning for them. But we're going to talk through those different types of supports today too. And then obviously the big thing at the end is, as we're doing some of these additional remediations and intervening in order to help students be able to be successful within the core, we've got to constantly be reevaluating. So what does it look like to make sure that what we're doing to intervene, to remediate, is moving the needle with students? And so just keeping that data at the forefront, keeping anything that we're doing, both core and outside of core, that our teachers are supported and understand how to use that data, then to continuously drive instruction. So it's this giant cycle that's happening all the time. And sometimes it's more formative data, sometimes it's summative data, sometimes it's a little bit of everything. But I think those are the big pictures in terms of when we're thinking of just overview and going through this process, which I'm sure is hopefully, all familiar to this group for sure. Okay, so moving forward, just quick recap. So there are some key points that I wanted to make sure that we hit on before we actually dive into the remediation guides. And so within the assessment remediation guide, remember there's different ways that it's set up. So for kindergarten and first grade, it sequences and parallels the skills teacher guides. So it's a 1-for-1. For every skills unit, you have an assessment and remediation guide. So there'll be one for skills unit 1, skills unit 2, so forth, for kindergarten and first grade. For grades 2 and 3, the assessment and remediation guide is a combination. So it's all of your units. So it's all the units in second grade and all the units in third grade, just into one guide. So it's a lot more comprehensive. And it's the focus for that, and the reasoning for that is because, and I think we talked about this last time, is that we're getting closer to students having that explicit instruction from K and 1 by the end of second grade, being explicitly taught and systematically taught all code, so basic and advanced code. But we also know that we have second and third grade students who haven't mastered all of that code and still have some gaps, whether it be in letter sound correspondences, or might have some specific decoding things that they need to work on. They're just not quite fluent yet. So that's why we have it in one place, because it's more comprehensive. For fourth and fifth grade, that's when we move from the assessment remediation guide to the decoding and encoding remediation guide. And this is also for a little bit of a similar reason as what we see in second and third grade. We know that some of our oldest students, for lots of reasons, have gaps still in code knowledge, and that they're falling below grade level, and they're not successful fluent readers. And I think for our older grade teachers, for fourth and fifth grade teachers, this is where things get really tricky. They may not have the experience of teaching students how to learn to read. either because that just hasn't been their background, they haven't taught younger grades. And at 4th and 5th grade, most teachers are expecting or are hoping that students are coming already knowing how to read, and so that way they can focus more on the comprehension, that reading to learn side of things. But we know that that's not always the case. And so 4th and 5th grade, that guide is set up the same way. So it is just one decoding and encoding remediation guide for all of 4th and 5th grade. And a lot of it will go back to that sort of the code scope and sequence that is built from kindergarten through 2nd grade. So helpful to our older grade teachers when they're not quite sure where to start or where to go, to have it all in one place. So in both guides, so K3 and then in 4-5, there's a lot of things within the assessment and remediation guide. So it always gives you some sample lessons. So if teachers are starting to use the guide in order to start to plan lessons, there's samples already created in there, so they get a sort of a feel of what this can look like. Some of the things that they'll be able to have access to within the guides are things like additional chaining list or word list. There's additional opportunities for specific activities to reteach certain skills. There are games in it. So I know a lot of teachers, when they're looking at if they've got like a win time or an intervention time or another block of time, they're looking for some things for students to do independently. So the games are a great place because that reinforces skills that are happening during core. You can also use that as a time to reinforce skills that were already taught but still need to be continued to be practiced. So the games are a great thing for teachers that are looking for something that is connected to the core. It keeps them out of teachers pay teachers, and it's directly aligned to what that instruction is looking like within CKLA. So that's something that's really helpful. There's also progress monitoring assessments that are included in the assessment remediation guide and the decoding and encoding guide. So we know that even for our students who maybe don't have as significant gaps, we're not talking about our tier 3 kids that need something super intense, but we're talking about our tier 2 kids who have gaps, and we've got to monitor it because it goes back to the previous slide, right, where we are talking about making sure this part here that we're constantly reevaluating and making sure that we are addressing the right specific skills in order to fill those gaps. Those progress monitoring assessments that are included within the guides are all a part of that for all grade levels. And then there's just a plethora of resources. So resources, I know, is super generic term, but I think what I can encourage all of you to do right now is we start to sort of deconstruct the guides, to take the time that we're spending together now and then start to, slowly go into different grade levels so that way you become even more familiar, so you can be that like a couple steps ahead of your teachers as they're starting to dig into this as well, and as they're starting to think about how they can utilize all of these resources that are in these guides. I'm going to cover one more thing and then I'm going to pause so that way I can make sure that I'm addressing any questions that we might have. So there are different components that are included within both the K3 assessment remediation guide and then the 4-5 decoding and encoding remediation guide. So you'll see everything is always split into these 5 components. There's always a warm-up. There's always an example or an opportunity for teachers to introduce and then for some explicit teaching. There's guided practice that is directly connected to skills. And then there's guided practice that is directly related to students connecting or applying those skills. So the guided practice is teacher facing. So it's a sort of like I do, you do. And then at the end, there's some independent practice and progress monitoring. So when we're looking at the basis of an assessment or remediation guide lesson, teachers, if they're starting from the very beginning to the very end, it can look like this. The other thing that I'll mention is that this works well when teachers have a small group of students and they've got 15 to 20 minutes of time in order to really thoughtfully plan out and construct what this lesson would look like. We also know that in any given day and in any given block of time, like you've got lots of needs, and it might be a singular teacher working in a group. So it might be that we're just pulling out one of these components, and maybe we're just doing guided practice with skills and it's the teacher that direct instruction, or maybe that next day then we're doing just that guided practice where it's the students applying what they went through the day before. And so just naming that as well. This is, I think, like a solid example of sort of like what we do in a typical instructional block in the class: warm up, introduce, practice, students practice, engage them in some sort of independent activity. That's the way the assessment remediation guides and the decoding guides are set up. So I just wanted to name that, but I also wanted to name the value of starting to think about, well, let me see if I don't have the manpower and sometimes the time to do all of this, how can I do different components? How can I do different pieces of this? And so I think it's, again, teachers knowing their students best, teachers knowing what they have capacity to do, and teachers knowing I have this data to use to drive some instruction, and now what can I do? What do I have access to in order to provide some of that additional reteaching opportunities?
So Jamie, can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi. So if you're following all the components, what are you thinking for time? I know it could probably vary depending on the skill, but are we talking like an hour here, or?
Yeah, so we try to keep it at least at 30 minutes max. So it would be about a 30-minute reteach intervention lesson from warm up to independent practice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, nope, good question. What other questions do you guys have before we move on? Okay, so you're probably like, well, let's actually see something. Let's actually do something with this. That will be helpful. That's where the real questions will happen. So I talked, I think the last time that we met, about the table of contents. And so the table of contents is a place where I always suggest people start, because, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen here because I'm going to drop some things in the chat. So bear with me here for a second as I get my computer to cooperate with me. So in the table of contents, you're going to see quite a few different things. And so let me drop a couple examples here in the chat. And for today's purposes, I'm going to drop in K1 and 2 first, and then I will follow up via email with all of them for you guys. Bear with me. Sorry about that. I thought I had these links open. I didn't. So that was the kindergarten table of contents. Here's the first grade table of contents. And then second grade table of contents. And I'll follow up with third and then the fourth, fifth after we wrap up today. Okay, let me go back and present. So a couple of things about the table of contents. It's really important for us to be able to understand that. I think what I hear most from teachers is they're like, and I think I shared this with you before, they love the assessment remediation guide. The first thing that a teacher wants to do is, I'm going to print it all out. And I myself like to have things in print, physical copies in front of me as well. And so it is downloadable, it is printable. However, there is no humanly way possible that they will ever need to print all of it out. They're not going to use all of it. And so what I would suggest to you to do is, if they're going to print anything, that they print the table of contents. And so if I'm a kindergarten teacher, I'm going to print the table of contents of the specific unit that I'm on, as I'm starting to plan for maybe some small group time or intervention time with my students. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is even potentially even before they print the table of contents, when they're planning, they might be using the table of contents. They might be using just those pages, because you'll see that the table of contents is not incredibly too long. I'm going to click on kindergarten just to show us here live as we're together. So this is just kindergarten unit 1. So even before I start to print stuff out, and maybe even before I start to print my table of contents, a couple of things I'm going to want to look at. So there's the scope and sequence is, I use this all the time. I actually have the scope and sequence from each grade level printed for me because it's a quick go-to. So the scope and sequence is included. That's one place that I'm looking for as I'm starting to think about what do I need. Maybe I'm midway through my year and I know I've explicitly taught all of these skills and I can't remember when I taught a certain sound. I'm going to go back here and look. So scope and sequence, incredibly helpful, really important. The other thing is that once they get through the scope and sequence and they get through some of the different components, you'll see here, you're seeing me click through, right?
Jamie, no, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh no.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh. See, this is what happens when I try to use multiple monitors. Oh man. All right.
There we go.
Back up. All right. So this is the example of what you'll see. So if you've opened up any of the table of contents, this is an example from Unit 1. And so what I was saying is that that scope and sequence, that first 2 pages, or the first page, goes through all of your different units. And so I look here all the time when I need a quick reminder of like, oh, this is the unit where you introduce this sound, or this is when we're working on these particular digraphs. So the scope and sequence is here. It's also in a lot of other places, but this is an easy one-stop shop. The other thing that it also will include, and this is at every grade level, is then the different components. So you'll see like from phonological awareness to phonics, writing, fluency comprehension, all of that is in here. So it's also a quick, easy place for teachers to see, one, where they can find it within the kindergarten assessment remediation guide and what particular units that they would want to go to within the assessment remediation guide or within just the regular skills units. So that's one sort of point. The other point is that you have the table of contents, which is just a few pages long, but the table of contents goes along for every unit. So you'll see that within every table of contents, it's broken into sections. So it's broken up by different phonological awareness components, reading and writing, depending on what's covered within that unit. Because remember, in kindergarten and first grade, it's going unit by unit. And second, third, it's going by the entire grade level, so it's comprehensive. And then fourth and fifth grade is comprehensive because it actually goes back to support some of those that end code instruction. So for me, if I'm thinking about what I need, I'm pulling small groups, I have data, I know that I have some students who are struggling with, at the very beginning of kindergarten with just some writing strokes, and maybe it's my whole class, right? Like maybe I just need some additional at-bats around strokes. And so I'm seeing right here that in this section of the assessment remediation guide, I've got a whole section that's just addressing some additional things. So I've got a way that I can determine needs through assessment. I have an example of a template and an example of a sample lesson. I have some practice and either through worksheets or specific guided practice, different activities, and different ways that I can progress monitor. So when we say it's comprehensive, it's meaning that you have from page 179 through page 246, all just about writing strokes that directly connect back to that skills unit 1, the instruction that's happening there. So your table of contents for me is always the place where I'm determining where I'm at. I'm determining where I need to be in terms of what specific skills I'm looking for, what unit I'm looking for, if I'm going back, if I'm not staying within the same unit. And then I'm also then thinking about what types of materials am I needing? Am I needing specific lessons? Do I need to pull the lesson template so that way I can be strategic and create a template that has the warm-up, that has the guided practice, that has the guided application that goes through the process? Or am I looking for something that might be not as specific as an entire sort of lesson template setup, but I might just need a couple activities, or I might just need a couple reinforcements that I'm doing with my whole class or a larger group. So there's just a couple ways to think about it. to me, that's, and you may be thinking like, okay, great, but I actually think another way might be easier. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think this is in my experience, as we've been working with teachers for a long time and just gathering feedback and doing the work ourselves right alongside teachers. This is the place that we always start. We always start with the table of contents before getting into the weeds of printing everything. Because honestly, like I said, they're not printing, they don't need all of this. They are going to need particular parts of it. So that way, if I know I need additional sound lists and I need some games, I'm going to page 65 and I'm going to page 91. 91. And that's where I'm looking, and I'm going to just print the pages I need from there versus the entire thing. So that's the one biggest thing that I wanted just to stress around the table of contents. That's why the links that I shared with you in the chat, they actually are, I just pulled the table of contents out of the assessment and remediation guides. So that way you're not sifting through. So you're not trying to sift through all the different grade levels. So you can just have it all in one place. When I was a principal and I was working with teachers and planning outside of core instruction time, I did have the table of contents printed and sort of in a binder and just with me, because it was easier for me to, like, I'm tactile, I like things in my hand. And so I was using it, and it was an easy way for me to reference of like, okay, let's look at your data. Let's look at what data you have from students. What are some additional things that you're going to need in terms of instruction and materials? Let's take that now and let's dig back into the assessment or remediation guide and sort of match up. What am I looking for? It's a starting point, at least. Let me pause there and see just thoughts around just general around table of contents. And then what I would like to do is I have a couple student scenarios that I would like to go through. And just let you engage a little bit in like, all right, let me sift through the table of contents for a particular grade and see if I can find, or at least even match up when these skills were explicitly taught, or what I might need to go back to, even if it might be outside of grade level as well. Okay, well, let me do this. I'll take quiet as let's keep going, because I think I'm very much a person where I need to do something in order to, one, figure it out and learn it, and also be able to ask questions. It's hard to ask questions when you're like, okay, like, sounds good, let me try it. So what I have here is 3 different student scenarios, and I actually I'm going to leave it on the screen, but I actually have a link as well for you. So that way, if you want just to open it up on a doc instead of staring at the screen. Hold on one sec. So I have 3 student scenarios, and I figured this would give us an opportunity, even if we pause just for like 5 minutes, and obviously I'll be on here. We'll pause for 5 minutes. I want you to try to read through, pick a scenario, pick a kindergarten, pick first, pick second grade, whatever you feel that you want to engage in right now. And the idea is read through the scenario. So I give you a little bit of a synopsis of each one of them as they are kindergarten, first and second grade students. And then I also included some assessment information. So these are actually real live CKLA K1 and 2 students that we've worked with in the past, and actually worked with teachers on how to then plan for some additional instruction with the assessment remediation guide. So I'll leave this up here. The sheet that you should have in the chat also is exactly what's on the screen here. It's just probably not as small to read. So just in case you want that. But the idea here is, what I would love for you to do is take a look at the student scenario, take a look at their information, and see what you can do in terms of pulling up that specific assessment and remediation guide table of contents to see if you can figure out where to land in terms of what would the starting point be. Where would I start with looking for some additional instruction or additional remediation opportunities just using the table of contents. And hopefully what you'll see is that it doesn't take it shouldn't take a ton of time in order to be able to land around an idea of where that student would need some additional support given the assessment data and knowing what's in the table of contents. How does that sound? And then we'll come back together, obviously, to chat about it, because I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with just that. That's just step one in the process of using the assessment remediation guide.
It sounds good. How many minutes do you want us to work on this?
Yeah, so it's 12:30 now, and I know I definitely want to still talk to you guys a little bit about summer school. So if we spent like about, I know 5 minutes isn't a long amount of time, but let's do 5 minutes. We'll check back in 5 minutes. And
Perfect.
then if we need more time, like we come back and we continue to revisit this. Okay, super.
Jamie, can you, oh, you gave.
Do you need the table of contents again? Do you want me to drop them in?
No, no. I thought you were going to keep the screen up, but I'll just go grab the.
Hold on. Nope. I can go back.
If you just add the HTTPS to the tiny URL, you'll get there.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, because I do want to copy. Huh? I know. That's why I'm going to try to print it. Of course.
Okay, let's spend like another minute or so, and then we're going to come back together and just chat through a couple things. Okay, so I know that was super fast, and obviously the first time that you're practicing something or doing something or utilizing something in this manner can be clunky, and you're probably like, "Wow, I've got a lot of digging to do, and it's a lot of back and forth." And I would want it printed out in front of me, and so that obviously will help just sort of navigate a lot quicker too. But would love just to get some initial thoughts around, one, were you able to navigate to where you think might be a starting point for either of these students or any of these students? And two, if you did navigate, where did you navigate to? And sort of, I'd love to just hear that process or your thought process behind it. I will also put the caveat here in there sometimes is not a right or wrong answer either. So don't feel like I can't share what I was doing because it's wrong. I don't think it is. I think hopefully what you're seeing and hopefully what you will continue to see is that as teachers become more familiar and more comfortable with the materials, and as all of you do as well, you're going to have your own system and your own sort of flow of like how this works. I want to just make you feel more comfortable with some things that I feel like have worked really well with other teachers and other leaders. And also just so that way you can start to navigate and maneuver the materials ahead of your teachers that you're supporting too. So true honesty here. Like how did it go? How did your quick 5 minutes ish go? Where did you land?
I found it relatively easy. I mean, I took Sophia, the second grade student. I mean, I found that there were like lots of stories that were not stories, but like places where there were places for her to practice oral reading.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found, I couldn't find the exact place for words that ended with Y for the long E and long I sounds.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I feel like just with more time, I could find it. I like just felt a little rushed because I knew we were being timed, but that's okay. I mean, I did feel like the table of contents, and it's the first time, to be honest, that I've looked at the table of contents today. So I thought it was very well organized. So that was just my experience.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody?
Lynn, I think we're going to say something.
I probably didn't have as an easy, I'm older, so I'm probably had a harder time. So my question is, so I looked at the first grade one, but I was unclear because in the ARG, there's one for every unit. So I was kind of like wrapping my head around where in the year are we? Am I looking at unit 1 ARG? Am I looking at unit 3 ARG? Like I had a hard time realizing like where I was in the unit, in the progression of the year.
Yeah. So probably information right even in the data construction that I gave you that was left out of there. You guys would know that whenever you're using your real data. Sometimes though, I think this is a good example. Like in this example for Ian, I didn't say we were in unit 4 or unit 6, right? It was just a laundry list of some different things, some different data points, because sometimes it may not matter what unit we're in, because I need to go even further back within the program. And so for like Ian, for example, like I took the word reading isolation data. I took his needing for help with like different consonants, and then I also took the below benchmark data from that word reading assessment that is listed there on the vowels. Knowing that he was below benchmark there, I went back in that scope and sequence of first grade and saw that in unit 3 we actually have explicit instruction around vowels. So that might be a place.
I have unit 3 written down. So there you
See,
go.
you did it. So to me, that's where I would start. I would take, out of all the data that I have, I think this is where it's important, and this is the work that you all do with teachers, is how to help them prioritize, because it can get overwhelming.
Not knowing the scope and sequence that well yet. So I'm like, okay, is this a kid who's at the end of the year struggling? Is it, and I have to go way, way back, or is it, I was just like, I didn't know where I need to know where it was in the year, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's super important, right? I mean, you guys would know that because you're going to be in the thick of it in that day to day of where we're at in the year. So, I honestly don't know, because I can't remember whenever I created these where we were at in the year. But I do know that in my notes, I had starting back at the vowels in unit 3, because that's where that explicit instruction happened. So that's where I was pulling some of my additional lessons for reinforcement from.
I also wrote like comprehension, page 167.
Yep.
Because he missed the inferencing, to start looking at those pages.
Yeah, so comprehension is for sure an area, right, where he struggled. That was right off the bat, but he's probably struggling in comprehension because he's not quite a fluent reader yet. So, it's those things go hand in hand. But for sure, there's additional comprehension that's already built in that we can address within the assessment remediation guide for first grade. And then I would definitely be prioritizing some additional vowel instruction for him. Yeah.
I think the point you made earlier, Jamie, is really important. Like when you first started talking with Lynn, that in a way, it doesn't really matter what time of year it is. What matters is, like it said in the graph that you first showed us, like the very first thing, and sometimes it can be tricky, is to determine what the student need is. And sometimes they have more than one need. So then we have to figure out, okay, which one do we address? Yes, that one. Like, what do we address first? I mean, honestly, the children we work with here, let's be real, usually have more than one problem.
Yep.
They almost always have fluency as one of their problems, but often they do have gaps in their code knowledge. They really do. And so what do we do first? So,
yeah,
but it really shouldn't matter what time.
Right. I guess I have to know the scope and sequence a lot better, because I can if you're looking at and I'm like, okay, we're used to having that way farther belong in first grade. So it's like, oh, well, he missed it, but typically he hasn't gotten there yet as our first grader, but now as the new first grader, he will have to know that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So the scope and sequence, especially that K2, right, where we're laying the foundation of code knowledge, because that will also impact your 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students and teachers ultimately when they're trying to figure out how to navigate or when to navigate backwards, when to stay within grade level, and then when to remediate even further. That will be really important. But I think, there are reasons of why that when we're working with students that we remediate at grade level, or we try to stay as close to remediation within where they're at, which is why K&1 is set up the way it is. Because if you think, in obvious reasons, K&1, they have they have the smallest gaps, right? So we want to try to keep them as close as possible, knowing that we might need to deviate back a unit or two in order to fill something specifically. But they have the smallest gaps. as we move on 2nd through 5th grade, that's when our gaps get bigger and bigger. And we need to make sure that we're understanding that progression of code that happens K through 2. So we can help our teachers go back exactly, like we can hone in exactly where that gap is, where the instructional materials are to fill that gap, fill the gap, and then be able to keep them moving so that gap doesn't get bigger.
I did kindergarten, and it fits right in with what Lee said, where it says they have more than one gap, and even in kindergarten they have more than one gap sometimes.
Yep.
But the flow chart of if they struggle with this, then you do this. If they struggle with B, you do this. D is if they struggle with more than one thing, start here and then go to the next one.
Yeah. So I mean, it is that, you know, I think for all of you, it's good to, you're getting sort of some ins and outs right now so that you can help teachers, because otherwise I think teachers get really overwhelmed with something like the assessment remediation guide, and then they just revert back to like what they've maybe used prior, which isn't as honed in and as targeted. And so this is really targeted. This is really, if you think about what they have access to at their fingertips, that's connecting to core and aligning to the way that students are being explicitly taught within the core to fill gaps even. We should start to be able to close the gap a lot quicker, and we should start to be able to actually see, especially, you know, your kindergarten students coming in this year, you know, keeping sort of track of that group of what happens on around code instruction from K1 and 2, and those students as they move across grades, obviously, right, they're having that really explicit approach to foundational skills. I'm telling you, it's going to be amazing what's going to happen. But we also know that there's going to be an amazing thing that happens across all grades, because you've got resources that are all connected regardless of what grade, and you have things at your fingertips that you can use in order to support teachers and ultimately support students fill those gaps.
So I focused on Sophia, the 2nd grader.
Mm-hmm.
And so because she was having so much trouble with you know, R control, IR, and then the different sound spellings for long I, like IGH, and Y saying E, and Y saying I believe it's in section V,
Mm-hmm.
unit 4. So I would give her more practice decoding words with those patterns.
Yep. Yeah, I had unit 4. I have unit 4 written down as well. That was my go-to, because I also knew that's where we were gathering some of the data from that assessment from unit 4. So I was going to directly connect back to unit 4, because it looks like she needs reinforcement with some of those specific sound spellings.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Super. Okay. Well, I mean, we could do this for a long time, right? We could do this for a while. We could, but I think the point that I wanted to make sure, or at least a starting point for today, was just to help you understand how to navigate the table of contents, to stress the importance of the scope and sequence. You know, if you haven't already, print your scope and sequences out, especially for K2 right now, because that's where that, you know, we're talking about that learning to read side of things. So get comfortable there, and also, you know that this is a process. And like I said before, there isn't a right or wrong. What feels good to me may not feel good to everybody in terms of how I'm doing things. But I think ultimately what we want to do is make sure that teachers are using their data to guide instruction. So we're having conversations around the data. We also are helping teachers understand that we're using data to guide instruction, but we also have to, and I think we said this the last time, like we've got to get the core right. If we get the core right, then we don't have as many gaps. And so we're going to really focus on getting the core right, but then we're also going to help our teachers understand how to use that data to guide instruction so that we can support core too. So we know it's twofold. We also know that we don't want to like cognitively overload teachers of, you know, learning all new program materials, making sure that they're going to strengthen and get the core right. And then we also will then be able to be there to support them so that way they understand how to, in addition to core, what do I have access to? How do I start to use some of these additional materials that will also support any gaps that we have and directly align back to my core? So, you know, just a little bit of work to do, but you guys are in a good place. You're starting early, which is so important, and I'm super thankful for that. I know Megan and I have talked a lot about that, about the great opportunities to adopt early and sort of start to get some things underway prior to, you know, think about it if it was like August, right? And we were just starting to have these conversations. So, you know, hats off to all of you for being ready to learn and ready to engage in this. Okay, so I know we are at about 9 minutes left, and I wanted to, and like I said, you'll have the recording, and I'm gonna actually share this presentation with all of you, so that way you have access to it too. That way you can go back to it. Things are linked in here. It's sometimes easier just to have the deck as well. But we did, like I said earlier, we do have some recommendations for summer school programming. Summer school being with, you know, the idea to provide additional opportunities, additional at-bats, strengthen students through additional practice, and really focusing on some literacy skills, both the foundational skills side of things and also knowledge building for all grades. So that way we have some recommendations that we've created across the company. So I'm gonna skip here. And I know I'm not presenting full screen, but this will be easier just for me to navigate through. So we have particular units for kindergarten, first and second grade that we're recommending for summer school programming. We are recommending that, you know, if you have opportunities to engage in skills lessons, that you're doing that for the full 60 minutes. If you're looking to add a knowledge component, we're suggesting about 30 minutes of knowledge. And then we are suggesting that additional instruction time, just like we would a regular day, right? A regular outside of summer school, regular instructional block during the school year. So things like, you know, some of our partners use Amplify readings. That's why you see that here. But using things like we were talking about, the assessment remediation guide lessons, the foundational skills boost modules that we have available to you in some different, you know, independent, small groups, partner types of rotations. So that sort of intervention block when time outside of the core. And so just real quick, you'll see whenever you get access to this that we've actually recommended specific units for skills, and then identified a knowledge domain for each K1 and 2. We actually even included the lessons for those units. The units for skills, let me just call out, are for a particular reason. So these are units that when we're looking at the scope and sequence and we're looking at basic and advanced code instruction that needs to be firmed up before moving into the next grade, these are the units that are pivotal for those. And so we've identified those units as well as the lessons for you. The other thing I will let you know, and I know I've been sharing some student activity book pages with you, so thanks for bearing with me. I just got the first ones to all of you, so hopefully everybody has access to that now. But what we are doing is we actually will have a summer program guide that will have all of the student activity book pages for all of the lessons that we've identified. So you don't have to worry about like what we're doing right now. Like, do we have access to the student activity books? How can we get access to them without using our new materials for next year? So you'll have access to all of the student-facing pages that would be needed that accompany the units and domains that we've identified for K1 and 2.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know you guys are you're also in a unique situation, right? Where you've got all the stuff, but you haven't had a year to do it. And so we don't want you having to like pick and choose through your stuff. And yeah, it just gets hard to navigate. So
and Jamie, could I just add that the same thing, remember, because you and I had that conversation on that Tuesday meeting. So thank you for sharing that, Jamie, because we discussed summer. Just to let all the reading soups know what we've worked with Amplify, in the sense that they've done that whole heavy lifting for the reading component. We've also done the same thing with Curriculum Associates for the math component, and they have similar guidance for us. So we'll be having a larger meeting with all of you to discuss those components for the summer after we've reviewed them.
Super. So let me just show, so you'll see here the recommended units and domains for kindergarten, same thing for first grade, same thing through second grade. units, lessons, those units for skills, again, very targeted reasons or targeted units that are specific to code knowledge that has to be mastered, or in the explicit approach to instruction is necessary to be firmed up before moving into that next grade. So that's why those particular units and lessons are identified. And then we do have recommendations for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And I'm gonna actually, you'll see it here whenever you get it. So we've identified additional units for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for a couple reasons, but I also wanna share the "and" clause to this, is that it gets trickier with 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade because we don't have the 2 strands. And we know that sometimes our students that are coming to us in summer school might need something a little bit different at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. They might need something that looks a little bit of a more very skill-based, foundational skills focus, making sure it's also grade appropriate. So 2 things that we've done. We identified units within grade levels that were focused high instruction on writing, high instruction or high student engagement and student involvement in them. So those have been identified by our content team, and that's what you see here. But the other thing, the "and" side of it is, oh, did I not include it in this slide? I think I cut it out of here. No. But okay, well, I'll add it when I send it to you. But what I wanted to share with you is that I work with lots of partners across the country, and so my team and I actually crafted for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade that if you're looking for some additional places to support students who need some additional foundational skills instruction at summer school, we have a list of suggestions of what you would use. So it's twofold. You can continue grade level core instruction in summer school. That is super important if that student hasn't finished their learning at that grade level. But we also know that some of our older students need something a little bit different, or they need an opportunity for that 3 weeks or 4 weeks or however long your summer school is to focus on some grade level, but also have an idea of how to, what else could be used that can address some potentially code knowledge that they may be missing in those older grades. So I will add that back to the slides here and put that in here so that way you have the additional recommendations too. And then I think the last thing that I wanted just to share with you, and you may be thinking I already have these, Jamie, so if you do, I apologize, but just in case you don't, I'm gonna drop them into our chat. The program guides are super helpful resources, and so if you haven't seen these or haven't used these or haven't had access to these, there's a K2 program guide, there's a 3-5 program guide, and then we actually have an updated K5 program guide. And I see I left the pre-K program guide out of here too as well, so I'll make sure to include that and link that into the deck that I share with you. But those program guides are super helpful, big picture. So for all of you that are supporting teachers across multiple grades, I use it actually all the time. It's a good resource just to go back if I'm looking for specific language around a certain component or a certain grade level, a certain feature, a lot of different things that you would use the program guide for. It's a good one-stop shop overview. So just wanted to make sure that you had access to those if you didn't already. Okay, so we went right down to the minute, and I feel like I gave you guys a lot of information, and I know I talked a lot today. So hopefully we are getting there, and hopefully this is one more notch in sort of continuing to learn. But I'll pause now if there's any final questions or things that we want to address before we wrap up, and then otherwise, if we want, Chris, if you want to keep adding to the laundry list of topics, we will just keep expanding and adding.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I just have a big picture question. Is this what we're going to be using in Title I intervention, or is this more for the classroom teachers to use for intervention and we're still using some of our supplemental resources? And that might be a district question. I don't know. Typically, we choose the intervention based on the student need. So
That's my question.
Yeah, we've started to have those conversations. Sherry, you want to address that? You know, because I'm even thinking for summer school, I don't know if we are going to have to are we designating this as being the intervention for some of them, for some of the students? But you're just talking once we get back into regular classrooms, tier 2 and tier 3. Go ahead, Sherry.
So, to me, your individualization to the student needs is what you do for your tier 2, right?
Okay.
Differentiation of instruction, just like they have here. I think the ARG is more to support all classroom teachers, so they have a game plan for those particular pieces in the classroom. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Thanks, Sherry.
Yeah.
Not a problem. I'm open to negotiation on these things, as you always know. I always love to take feedback from all of you, but that's just my first initial thought out of the gate.
And I'm gonna, you likely have this, but I'm just dropping my email in here. So if there are things that you're thinking as you're working along the way, please continue to reach out. I know I've heard from some of you, and I know I owe a couple of you some emails back, so I haven't forgotten about you. I know I got a couple emails the last 2 days, so please keep reaching out. Happy to continue to help. And otherwise, have a great rest of your Friday afternoon.
You too. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you, Sherry.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Jamie.
you.
Thank you. Girls, you can stay on for just a second. Those schools that haven't had the Jerry presentations, so far they're going along really well. We've made it, I think the best presentations have been where the kids are able to ask their questions. So I just go on in the beginning and we warn them that if they are not muting, then they are going to be kicked out of the meeting. So those of you that have been monitoring, thank you, because we've still had to mute and unmute kids that are continuously unmute, but we can, I'm giving you permission to kick them out. Beach Street today had, and actually Green Acres, did you have some of your kids? Some of the remote kids just got into the classroom and the classroom teacher shared her screen. They didn't come into the link separately. So if some of you want to do that, that's fine. But it's been, you know, I was talking at the beginning to some of you about Hallsville had one little boy get up. He was like, Mr. Pilata, I just have to tell you, it is such an honor to have you here. He's like, I've read so many of your books. And I mean, it was just so cute. And then, you know,
Aw.
kids are just sharing, you know, why don't you write this? Or I'm thinking about this. And it's been really, really cute, you know, and I think they're getting a lot of good ideas. And I think he's able to show his process. I don't know if any of you want to pipe in about things that have gone well or things that are still kind of tricky.
I liked, you know, like Chris said at Hallsville, like the questions, letting them ask, but Chris really reminded them not to push the icon hand until it was question time. And I thought that was a good idea.
Good.
If they did it, I went on and just lowered their hand. And if they kept doing it more than 3 times, I did kick them out.
Okay.
We had over 114, and I think there was only 3 that I had to do that to. And I felt bad, but they were starting to be a little bit annoying with that hand raising. But they really asked great questions. And that kid that said that, he's just such a special second grader here. He's autistic and you never know what's going to come out of his mouth. So that was,
right.
It was cute.
It was really cute. And Lynn at Green Acres had a couple of kids share their books with him. Like they had, one said, oh, I'm a comic strip writer, and, you know, held up a couple of his books. And, you know, it's just, it was, I don't know. I think it's been pretty powerful, but Cass, did you want to say something?
I have to say that we did it exactly opposite. And once we got past the fact that people can't present, if a whole bunch of teachers jump in and they have kids in their classroom, they can't present, or there's this loud screeching noise. It was outstanding. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
It was outstanding. And he went through, and then the kids would line up and they would ask their questions, and their questions were thoughtful, and he was very patient. And we went way over, but he was really patient with us. And I don't know, it was very organized and, you know, we moved right along and they did a really, really nice job. So
Yeah.
it was
He's
extremely positive.
good.
Is it
good.
about 30 minutes presentation and 30 minutes Q&A?
What it's been is typically he gets on, like I introduce him, he'll get on, he talks briefly to the kids, and then he shares his screen. He's got a PowerPoint.
Oh,
He'll
okay.
present for about a half an hour, and then he'll stop for
Oh.
questions. But then he goes on at the end because he shares one of his latest books that is not even complete.
Okay.
Actually, two of them. And then
Okay.
shares some stuff that he has seen in Antarctica, but sometimes he does that in the beginning. So it
Okay.
just depends. He tries to switch it
Okay.
up a little bit, but
Okay.
but then there's time in the middle, and you know it's just dependent on some of these kids' questions too, because sometimes
Sure.
their conversation, he says, "Oh, let me show you this," and he'll hold something up, but I think it's been really good.
Because that afternoon time slot is 1:35 to 2:35, so there's not much extra time at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's been a little
Okay.
tight with some of it, but
Okay.
for the most part,
Okay.
they've all gone at least an hour. Cass, I had to get
Okay.
out of yours because I had another meeting, but all of the others, I mean, today Beach went a little over too, and Green Acres, yeah, Green Acres went a little over because we were late for Beach, but overall they've been really good.
We went over yesterday, but he had technical difficulties, so we hung there for like 10 minutes.
That's true. Yeah. He's like, how do I share this? And yeah, it got a little crazy, but overall he's pretty good. He's been good other than that one Green Acre situation where he couldn't find his screen or whatever. I don't know. But anyway.
Is he doing this at home?
He's in Boston. Yep.
Yep.
He's from in his office at home and
okay.
Whatever.
Great.
But you know, it's too
Great.
bad he can't be here, but
Yeah.
it's not that bad, you know. It could be
Yeah.
worse, right?
Yeah. I pushed into one fifth grade and one second grade to do the author study. And in fifth grade, we were generating some questions that they might ask him. And one fifth grade girl said, when you compared from when you wrote your first book to your most recent book, have you gotten better?
Oh,
And
that's a
I know,
great
I was
question.
like shocked that she came up with that question by herself. So I want to make sure we call on her.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I
Definitely.
thought that was great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and then then you get the remote kids that are snuggled up in their PJs on their
I
bed.
know. I
It's just
know.
so funny. But
But did you have the cameras? Sorry to interrupt, Chris. Did
Yeah.
you have the children have their cameras and microphones off while he was speaking to save bandwidth, or is
No,
that not important?
it didn't matter. The cameras mostly were on, but the
Oh,
microphones were off, and it was fine because
okay.
he can only see once he presents his screen, he doesn't see that many, and he likes to see the kids, you know.
Oh, okay.
And it was funny for me to watch them because I'm listening to him and just to see their faces like, oh my God, he touched a whale, and he touched a shark,
Okay.
and so
Okay.
it's kind of nice to see that, but it didn't affect the bandwidth. I mean, knock on wood, we haven't hit a lot of glitches.
Oh, so afraid. Okay.
Yeah, so because I was foreseeing like the first couple, nobody getting on or something, or it totally crashing, but
Yes,
overall
yes.
it's been good, especially with the
Okay.
testing going on. I was
Right.
that's what I was most nervous about,
Yes,
like in the
yes.
mornings. So do you think that? Oh yeah, Chevy, go ahead.
So I know that Christmas has passed a long time ago, but it is snowing today. So we all pitched in and got you a little something just to say thank you for a horrific year and always being there to support us and lead us along the way.
Oh my God, it's right here. Do you want me to open it right now? Did you feel like this was the Amplify thing was enough? What do you want additionally? Sorry. Let me know if you want Jamie to do additional scenarios.
Can she share some schedules of
oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
What other schools that she's worked with have devised?
Right, because of this tier. Yeah.
Great. What's your present?
All right. Sorry. I know, because we got to go. We got another Jerry meeting. I'm seeing 28 Jerrys. Oh my God. This is so cool. Oh my God. Sport for exercise. Oh, this is this hydration stuff? breaking a sweat packed with complete electrolytes. Nuon is your go extra mile water. Thank you. Oh, and this is for my bike so I don't fall off. Oh, these are cute. I like them. Is that? And then I know what this is, I think. Ah. Runner's Alley. All right, I'll go get some nice biking stuff, girls, and running stuff. Thank you so much. You guys did not have to do that, but thank you. So I'm going to be really fit and I won't fall off my bike anymore. I hope, I promise. So yeah, shoot me a text or an email of other things that you want her to cover.
I'd appreciate just work with the upper grades.
Yes,
Yeah.
like 4th
She did
grade.
some scenarios that are pretty, I think that
would be
the
good.
manuals are hard to use for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, but when you get to 4th and 5th, it's not so easy to navigate
Okay.
when you have larger gaps with kids that haven't
Okay.
been part of this program. So
All right. So maybe we could go to encoding and decoding next time.
I've also
Perfect.
been getting a lot
Awesome.
of questions about how ELL teachers are going to work with this. They're pushing a
Well,
co-teaching model, and
Sherry,
they're all concerned.
Sherry has purchased, and I don't know what it's called. It's some EL
Language
program.
Studio.
Thank you, Language Studio, and there are 5 days of training or something, and they've purchased it, and I think that's going to be the expectation that all the EL teachers are trained in it. So that I think probably thanks to CARES money, to be honest with you, they're getting a lot more than we probably could have afforded. But that I have a feeling will help out. And I don't know if SPED is going to be weaved into some of this too, because, you know, I mean, obviously what she's doing, what she showed today with the ARG and the encoding and decoding, it is really to support that tier 1 and what's missing there. But I don't know if SPED is going to be able to utilize some of this stuff also.
You went to the district website?
So Chris, I thought, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Kristen, mine's quick. How do we get extra logins?
What? Who do you need them for?
My library media person.
Okay.
You can't use the demo one?
I'm not sure how long the demo is going to last.
That lasts forever, I think. I thought we just logged in from Google. That's the way I've doing.
When she logs in from Google, she doesn't have access to it.
Oh.
I'm still logging in under the demo one.
Okay, I don't have.
Yeah, my teachers are too, the demo one.
All right.
Under Google, and I gave our library media person the demo one, which she's using right now. But is that demo one going to expire? And then she's not going to be able to access it.
You have access. Like all I know is that.
Okay, I'll ask about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sounds good.
My teachers don't. My teachers only have the demo one. They don't have anything else.
I'm assuming most everybody just has that. Does anybody have differently?
I just click on login.
Lisa, you've got.
I'm there.
Yeah, we just go into Google. We go to the Amplify website, and it says log in with Google, and they log in with their Google account.
And they didn't start with the demo and like that.
Once they attended the first workshop, they had.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because I think we were told to go and log in with Amplify.
Well, yeah, you go to Amplify, and then it says log in with Google, Facebook, or something else. And
Right, and they told us to do the login with Amplify.
Oh, my teachers have been doing Google.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Most likely be
I'll ask about that then. Who else can get demo? I mean, logins.
I know people have to go. I have a quick question about summer school.
Yeah.
Which I thought I understood, but maybe I don't now. So because of all this money, we don't necessarily have to do that whole thing we've done in the past before, inviting kids. According to Liz, Sherry sent out that email to families, universal, check out what's online.
Yep.
Then we send an invite.
Sorry, can you say that
But
one
I
more
thought,
time? And they lie.
I can hear a lot of Michelle. A lot of choices that sounded fun, but now we we doing Amplify worksheets and Ready Math? I'm going to
Okay,
cry.
and your son's name is Ethan?
That sounds like what it's going to be. Is that the deal?
Okay.
I
And
don't,
who's the substitute teacher?
no, I think the summer school is going to be a variety of different things.
Such as?
Well, they're having different themes. They've got themes that are somewhat aligned to the Amplify units, supposedly.
Oh, so he's going in the first.
Hold on, she's still talking. And then, but there's also this part where, you know, there's going to be tutoring and intervention. So that's what I'm trying to wrap my brain around, because I was trying to look at that book nook that would have instructors or tutors available online if we needed it. Although now we may not need as much online stuff as we thought. There's so many different. Go ahead.
She coming back? I mean, I missed some of it because this is my duty time too. So I'm trying to listen. I only got my duty. Is she going to be cycling back to talk to us about the summer school stuff, and then maybe they see how many people they have to work it, because we're getting questions and I don't feel like I can explain what's happening. Oh, there are all these choices. What are they?
I know. Well, and there, if you looked at that information flyer, it breaks it all down as to what for families, right? To understand what they are, because there's so many different. There's a 21st century. There's the extended year, whatever it's called, ESY. So I can't honestly, like we've all been saying, there's so many more pieces on this menu. I think looking at the menu helps. She was going to get on our meeting in the beginning and work with us more on this, but then Jamie changed, and now I don't think, is Sherry still on? No. I have we have another meeting this week.
Okay.
Yeah, because they don't want it to be all school. They want it to be play too. It's also extended, it's like a 9 to 2 time frame, which is much longer than it's been in the past. So I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, what's your son's name again?
I would say if they have additional questions to reach out to Sherry.
Okay, that'll be perfect too, because I can reach out to her as well, because I know she has a connection to you.
Are they having questions about what is exactly being asked of them to teach? Because from what I'm understanding is everything is going to be pretty well laid out for everybody. Like, they're not going to have to come in and, oh, you're doing a camping unit, create your own camping unit. I think it's going to be all done for them. As an instructor, is that what you're wondering, Kristen?
Kind of both. What's expected of us as the reading people. Teachers aren't going to, we went through the same thing last year. They're not going to work it without more information, but I'm sure that's coming.
Yeah. I think they wanted to get the information out initially just to get an idea of how many kids are going to sign up. And then you as a reading person or your team at school can look for kids that haven't signed up that we would want to sign up because of their gaps that they've had.
Can I ask a question now? But we need to know who's teaching to be able to recruit. Because I can't, like last year I was that person that recruited 60 kids or 100 kids or something insane, because it was keep recruiting. We have plenty of staff. And then I had to tell people, sorry, actually you can't come. It was a nightmare. And now I just got a phone call from a parent. She wants her incoming first grader registered and the third grader. And she did something online, and whoever she spoke with at the district told them to reach out to me. I'm like, I don't have any lists yet. I don't know who's working the program. Like, how am I going to know who signed up and who didn't? You know what I mean? This woman's like, so is my son all set?
Liz was calling that was all being managed district level. So I mean, there might be kids you want to call or parents to encourage them, but we're not doing what we've done in the past where we're trying to recruit certain kids or, okay, you have spots for 40 kids. It's just like, here it is, families, you're interested, go to this link and sign up. So whether they're all set or not, I guess isn't coming through us. That's confusing to me.
I've looked at the list and I'm going to tell you honestly, the first couple of names that I saw from Beach are not the kids that we wanted to target.
Right.
Like,
They are the literate parents who read it and said, oh, summer school, 5 days a week, 8 to 2:30, sign my kid up. Yeah, boop, 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 done. Not the ones that were sitting there going, we really need this kid to come in because they are struggling and academically they need to be in this in our program for the summer. Those are not those kids.
How did you see that list?
The same thing. Can we look
Because
at the list?
21st century.
Mine like, oh, free babysitting. I don't have to pay for anything. They're going to come pick them up at Green Acres. They're going to, because we've never had it before. So they're going to pick them up at Green Acres. They're going to bring them to the school that they need. They're going to drop them off at Green Acres. And I don't have to pay for anything.
Yeah. I just asked her to get back on, but I don't know if she has another meeting. Yeah, because the thing is, because the district is doing the registering, the district also sent out something to us, informing us about all the opportunities as teachers, right, to work it. Was there a registration on that? There was a registration on that too, no?
I thought she was going to come back with something simpler for us to apply to work it. And I
had someone fill out the application and they had to stop because they're already an employee. So the answer I got was to take a piece of paper, write already an employee, take a snapshot of it and just attach it so you can submit the application without all that information.
But we're going through it says internal application. You're already working, like that right there says I'm already working for the district, and my cooperating teacher from student teaching 30 years ago, I'm pretty sure aren't still around.
No, they told me not to fill out any of that stuff and just send a piece of paper saying already on file and just attach it so you could submit it.
Okay.
But how are you looking at students?
I haven't got a list yet. But
21st Century has access to the list. And so one of the 21st Century coordinators shared the list so that I could see who was on the list from Beach, because I have kids that I am targeting, that I am reaching out to parents and then making sure that they get the link to be able to sign up for summer programming.
I just saw the front of this. That is so cool, you guys. Sorry. I didn't even see it before. Did you see this? The Evolution of Running by the MSD Literacy Leaders. And it's a book. And then you open it up. Very cool. That's so neat. Who got that? That's really cool.
Chevy.
Chevy, that is so cool. If you're there.
I wanted to know if they've come out with like a schedule, because like they're asking us if we want to go to OG training. They're asking us if we want to go to
I know, you emailed me that.
So I don't know what to say yes or no to, because I don't know when any of this is.
I will share. I think I'm going to just share it as a view only document, and I will send it to the reading supervisor so you guys can look at the list. I mean, it is continually being updated as parents fill it out. So, and every school is on there. So it's a pretty massive document, but I mean, I can share it so that you can at least make a copy and then sort to see which families from your school are there. But I don't want to mess up. Like I will send it as view only. Is that fair enough?
Yeah. Okay. Or just ask your 21st century people.
Well,
but you don't have them, Lynn. I know. Not all schools have it.
We can have another meeting with Sherry, but the program guide for Here Are the Options Parents is 24 pages long. And today I heard lots about Amplify and Ready Math. So I'm just confused. But that's pretty typical for Ms. Bertel.
Yeah, we're confused a little earlier than probably normal. So maybe that's good. I don't know. But they're going to have, it's a huger program. So they're going to have more people to man it. and they don't have as many buildings to work with because there's a lot of stuff going on in your schools. So
fine too.
That's going to be a, that'll be a tricky part of this. So I don't know. I wish I had more answers for you guys. All I know is I was in on the meeting where Kelly Jo Bell was creating all of the explanations for the programs, and 21st Century was in on the meeting, and other people were in on the meeting. But we didn't really nail down what all of these programs are going to look like. It was more the offering for the parents, information for them. So, because then they were also talking about giving teachers options. Oh, she's waiting for somebody to let her in. Oh gosh, this is Jamie's meeting. Oh well. Jamie's meeting.
Yeah, it's kind of late now anyway, Chris. I think we'll have to maybe have her join us.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll just, what we'll do is have her stay on after the next meeting and then maybe clarify some of this. And within a week, hopefully more will be clarified. Okay. All right. Bye, girls. We got to get on for another one of these. Bye. Have a good weekend.